Once upon a time, there lived a brother and sister, named Hansel and Gretel. They lived with their father, in a small hut near the forest. Their mother had died when they were young. Their father was a woodcutter, and he decided to get married again. The woodcutter's new wife hated to live in a small hut. Also, she did not like her stepchildren at all. One night, Hansel and Gretel were in their bed and getting ready to sleep. They heard stepmother talking to their dad.
I don't like these kids at all. We need to get rid of them.
Their dad did not agree to it. The argument went for a long time. And finally, stepmother said,
No need to argue. I made up my mind. Tomorrow we will take them to the woods and leave them there.
Hearing all that, Hansel and Gretel were sad, and thinking how father could do that. Hansel was a clever boy and he devised a plan to find way back home. Later that night, Hansel snuck out and filled as many pebbles as he could in his pockets. Next morning, they all started to walk towards the forest. Their father told them that they were going for a family hike. As they were walking into the forest, without anyone noticing, Hansel dropped each pebble to mark the way back home. In the afternoon, their dad and stepmother lit a fire and told them that they will be back soon. They walked off and vanished in woods. Of course, they did not come back. Hansel and Gretel did not leave the place until the moon rise. Then they started to follow the pebbles shining in the moonlight, and they walked towards home. When the kids came back home, their dad was very happy, but surprised at the same time. But their stepmother was very upset and angry that they were back. After a week, the stepmother tried to get rid of them again. This time, she locked Hansel's room, so he could not go out to collect pebbles. Next morning, they all started to walk towards the forest again. But Hansel was a clever boy. This time he dropped the breadcrumbs that he had put in his pocket the night before, and made a trail the way back home. In the afternoon, their father and stepmother made up an excuse and went off, leaving them all alone in the forest again. Hansel and Gretel wanted to start walking back home before it got too dark to walk back. But this time, they could not find the trail they left, because all the breadcrumbs were eaten by birds. Hansel and Gretel felt hopeless. This time the kids were really lost. They both wandered around the forest for 2 days. On second day, they saw a bird. The bird chirped songs with its beautiful voice. They forgot their hunger for a moment and started to follow the bird. In front of a funny-looking house. This house had walls of jelly, a roof made out of pancake, and windows of chocolate, and was covered with colorful cream all around. Hansel and Gretel could not believe their eyes. The house looked incredibly delicious. They looked around and they saw an old lady at the door. When they told her all about what had happened to them, she felt very bad for them, and she let them in. The old lady brought all kinds of food and desserts for them. The kids ate food that they had not had before. After they ate their food, the old lady wasn't there. They started to look around. At the end of the corridor, they saw a small door. When they opened the door, they found cases full of gold and treasure inside. They were very surprised. Hansel wanted to get in and take a closer look. Right at that moment, they heard strange voice. When they turned around, the kids faced the old lady standing right there in front of them. Apparently, the old lady was a witch leading the kids to a dungeon with a house covered with cake and candy. However, the witch's true intentions were to eat them. The kids tried to run away, but the door was locked. She pulled Hansel by his hair and locked him in a cage. Then she dragged Gretel to the kitchen and asked to open the oven. Having no choice, Gretel did what the witch told her to do. Gretel was also a wise girl, just like her brother. She understood that the witch was going to push her in the oven. Gretel said, "There is a beautiful doll in the oven." The witch pushed her aside and stuck her head inside. Gretel gathered all her strength and pushed the old witch into the oven. She ran straight to Hansel, removed him from the cage. Soon the flames from the oven covered the whole house. Hansel and Gretel ran away from the burning house into the woods, but they did not know where to go. A while later, they came across a river. A giant swan took them one by one to the other side of the river. The kids looked around and suddenly they realized where they were. They ran home as fast as they could. When their father saw his kids, he was filled with joy, as tears of happiness rolled down his face. He explained to them how the stepmother had gone back to her parents' house. Soon after, they had left them in the forest, and how sorry he was for all that he did, and no matter how hard he had searched for them. The kids loved their father very much, so they forgave him. But another surprise was waiting for their father. They both reached their pockets and brought out gold and diamonds they had found in Witch's home. Their father could not believe his eyes. All the problems that their family had ever had went away, and they lived happily ever after. The end.